Welcome to MMT Chats. This episode is brought to you by ISCAR with new ideas for machining intelligently. Hey MMT followers, I'm Christina Fuges with MoldMaking Technology, and my guest on today's MMT Chats is Kevin Hartsoe, president of Neu Dynamics in Ivyland, Pennsylvania, which is actually only about 15 minutes from my home office, and I've known Kevin for a while, so hello, Kevin.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. So again, I've known you probably since the early days of MoldMaking Technologies.
Yep.
But why don't you give our viewers a little background on you and how you got into this whole industry?
Okay. So, gosh, I served my apprenticeship as a mold maker back in the 70s at a large company down in southeastern Pennsylvania called Crash Corporation. They manufactured molds and dies for the semiconductor industry. And much like Crash Corporation, who moved everything to Hong Kong, that's how I ended up at Neu Dynamics. Neu Dynamics was a competitor. It was founded 50 years ago, and I worked here starting in the early 90s. Worked under Carl Neu as the production foreman, and basically we worked together quite well. And in about 1996, 97, he started talking to me about buying his company, and I actually thought he was a little crazy at that time, but as history proves itself, it worked out. And in 1999, we closed the deal. So like I said, we've been around a long time. We company's coming up on 50 years old this year.
Wow.
We manufacture molds for the electronics industry.
Okay. Is there any kind of meaning behind the name?
Not really. Neu Dynamics, it's spelled Neu Dynamics, which honestly, when you're giving somebody your email address, you always have to spell it out. Neu, it was Carl's last name. In German, it's actually pronounced Neu, so it's Neu Dynamics. The original company was Dynamic Engravers. So that's where, when he started to get more and more into the mold build, and he had a partner at that time, when he bought his partner out, he changed it to Neu Dynamics.
Okay, I should ask that question more often because there's always a story behind the name, really.
Yep, very unique.
All right, so why don't you describe for the viewers the niche? What is Neu Dynamics known for? What's the specialty there?
So our specialty is basically electronic encapsulation. So we've encapsulated devices, everything from LEDs to computer chips that have several thousand wire bonds inside the chip. So people always ask, well, what's the difference between thermoset and thermoplastic molding? Thermoplastic molding, you take molten mold compound and squirt it into a cold mold, whereas thermoset molding, you take a warm or a puck style mold compound and you place it into a mold, and you push that mold compound in with a very low pressure into a very hot mold. And the material, it's an epoxy, and it goes through a transition to glass and converts itself. And that's what protects the computer chip.
All right, so I know we've talked before about being known for, you guys kind of pride yourself on doing these FirstOff projects.
Yep.
So to kind of describe that, give an example of an interesting FirstOff project.
So back in, this is kind of dating ourselves a little bit, but in the early 2000s, we started working with an automotive company in the Midwest, and we developed, it started out in a very simple prototype mold. I believe it was 6 cavities at that time. Very simple prototype mold that had blossoms. Once we figured out how to build the part, how to mold the part, has blossomed into 8 molding systems and 3 full-blown trim and form systems. So those molding systems are a molding press and a 364 cavity mold. So you're looking at a fairly large, fairly capital intense purchase for the customer. And they've been a very good customer for us over the years.
Wow. All right. So let's go back a little bit. So Neu Dynamics is not just about building a mold, a tool. I guess it's customer dependent. It's a system. So explain that a little bit. It can include the molding side of the business.
Correct. So it includes the molding side of the business. So in 2002, we started, along with my partner Dave Campbell at the time, started a company called NDC International. And NDC International, we represent approximately 12 right now. We represent 12 companies and distribute 2 companies in the U.S. for back-end electronics assembly. And when we say back-end, it primarily means after the wafer process in the semiconductor manufacturing, then becomes back-end. That's where they're talking about putting plastic around the chip. So we represent companies that have peripheral equipment around that process. Okay. So, our sister company, NDC International, since 2002, we have an installed base of equipment in the U.S. of over $60 million in installed equipment.
Okay. That paints a bigger picture of the company. Yep. So I'm glad that we talked about that. All right, let's talk about the electric vehicle market, because I know the EV market is a big customer base for Neu Dynamics. So can you explain that marketplace's work and how Neu Dynamics fits into that?
So when you think about an electric vehicle and the direction that everybody's going, I mean, GM announced that they're going to be making all electric vehicles by 2035. Ford is on that same path. There's other car manufacturers out there, startup companies that we're working with that are buying systems from us that are going to be a very big player in the industry. And some of these investors in those car companies are huge. Amazon's a big investor. Ford has actually invested in some of these smaller startup companies. So there's a lot of money going into that industry for these electric vehicles, and those electric vehicles require all types of electronic devices, everything from LEDs to high power devices. And that's where our relationship with Boschmann in the Netherlands comes in. They actually make molding presses and sintering systems for that industry. So we've got a very good relationship with them, and our installed base for their equipment is growing rapidly.
Nice. All right. So what is the key to what Neu Dynamics provides in that space? What is the key to your success in the EV market?
Well, our key to our success has been our experience in electronic encapsulation. So when you look at electrification of vehicles, there's a lot of high voltage going on. So there's a lot of requirements for very high temperature chips and very high temperature applications. Whereas previously, vehicles previously built with combustion engines didn't require the amount of sophisticated electronics that the EV market does. So that industry is growing rapidly.
So is it safe to say that not every mold builder out there can easily enter this market space?
We're definitely a niche player because of our experience with encapsulation. Okay. A lot of encapsulation has to do with, I'll give you an example. We actually take a populated printed circuit board and place it in the molding press and then clamp on it and put plastic around components. So there's not a lot of players in the industry that have that experience.
Yeah, niche. You're right. All right. So with this market exploding, can you talk a little bit about some of the projects that are in the pipeline?
So I've got several projects in the pipeline right now. We've got not only in the automotive arena, but we've got some in the military customers as well. We're supplying turnkey systems. Right now we've got 5 systems right now that we're supplying the mold and the press for. And then just as of this week, we should have a purchase order. When I say we, ourselves and one of our partners, having a PO for 3 more systems for an automotive application.
Wow, nice! You guys are doing it. That's all I can say about that, right? Yeah, it's awesome.
It's really interesting to see, especially my team here gets really excited because we get to see a lot of things the first time around, and it's nice to see that when you build a mold and you mold something for a very large automotive player, and it works the first time, that they're really pleased and they keep coming back to you.
Oh, that's awesome. And I would imagine too, for your workforce, I mean, everything mold builders do is exciting, but when it's kind of like this emerging hot marketplace, like especially for your younger generation, that's just got to help with just their motivation, right? Like, this is exciting. We're into a marketplace that's only going to go only going to get better,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Yeah,
That's
we're
fun.
excited about it, and we've got we've got some young people here that we're trying to bring up through the ranks. We recently hired a young engineer to do some project management, and we're training him as a startup tech. So we're teaching him the molding presses, teaching him the mold. He worked for us as an intern
Oh,
for
nice.
some molding parts because we have a molding department where we thermoset mold. So he worked for us for summer, and when he just finished college, he reached out to me, so we snatched him up.
That's perfect, because that's a big issue nowadays. So you're lucky when you have a find like that,
Yeah, it's huge.
right? All right, so let's turn a little bit now. Let's talk about COVID. You can't not talk about COVID, but is there a continuing impact of COVID on New Dynamics in any way? And what have you learned going through this past year and a half?
Well, overall, I think it hasn't had a negative impact on our business. I can't say that we actually got any COVID related mold build projects.
Okay.
But I do think that we're seeing, because of the economy, because of what what had happened over the last 2 to 4 years, we're seeing a lot of people coming back to the U.S. that are building systems and bringing business back that they would normally do in Asia. In the last week, we've got 3 opportunities for mold builds as well as full assembly cells, and it's low volume. When I say low volume, anywhere between 5 and 500,000 parts. So there's opportunities that are popping up as we work through this. The negative impact that we're seeing right now on COVID primarily has been the shipping. Right now, we're seeing shipping delays like we've never seen before. I'll give you an example. We had a molding press that was supposed to ship out of Japan on August 1st, and they were not able to get it on. It was supposed to ship on August 1st. We would have typically had it here in 3 to 5 weeks because it comes on over the ocean. Now what happened is they couldn't even get it on a boat until October 1st. So there was an 8-week delay. So our end customer decided to fly that molding press. So it was a huge expense. Yeah, the last molding press that we flew from Korea was $45,000 to fly the press. So
my gosh.
I can't imagine what this costs. So customer handled it on their own, and we should have that press in here later this week.
That's insane. That is something I have not heard yet, but that is, so that leads into my next question. I was going to say, what do you see, what is the number one challenge right now facing manufacturing, facing New Dynamics? Is it supply chain issues right now?
It's supply chain issues, and again, it always comes back to people. It's always people. We're always on the look for qualified machinists and tool builders, CNC people. We've always got an ad up in different arenas where we think that we're going to try to pull people in. We're lucky enough to have a community college. Bucks County Community College runs a training course for machine operators and machining. So we've interviewed quite a few people out of that area. Nice. Hopefully we'll pull some in starting on an apprenticeship, because we've been working with the NTMA on apprentices. We just recently had 2 young guys go through the apprenticeship program and come through it through flying colors. We've got another guy that's about a third of the way through right now for his apprenticeship.
Wow, I think you're doing great on the workforce side, being able to pull in some good talent.
And the younger guys that we've got right now, we've got three young guys in the machining area, and they're all excellent employees. They're very good, very knowledgeable, and they're very technical. To be honest with you, if I would have had to do some of the things that they do with computers when I was their age, and I'm not sure it would have worked.
Well, remember, they grew up, they came out of the womb on them, basically.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's to their advantage. All right. So last but not least, and kind of related to that, when you think about New Dynamics and mold builders, right, mold making professionals, how would you define that mold builder of the future, just in terms of the skills that they're going to need, what their job function is going to be? How do you see that role being filled in the future? Who are they?
So the mold builder of the future is going to be half mold builder, half technician, and half computer guy or somebody that's very astute with solid models, that can take a solid model apart, that he knows where split lines go, knows how molds are built, that he knows tolerances. We try to give our guys all the tools they need. We've got workstations out in the production area that they can access solid models and check sizes when they need to. So the mold builder of the future is going to be a guy that's very knowledgeable about computers and also a hands-on, because you still have to fit the molds.
Yeah.
So you've got that hands-on guy that's going to end up with the fitting. So I think a younger guy that's got a very good computer background, as well as a good sense of fitting and finished product.
Yeah, still hands-on, still that fundamental, which sad to say, a lot of that is leaving, right, as people retire. So it's good that we have to teach that still and let them get their hands dirty, for lack of a better way of saying it. So I agree with you there. All right, Kevin, that's about it. I want to thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing a little bit more about Neu Dynamics, and I wish you the best of luck. I'm sure we'll stay in touch as things grow there. I'm sure there's going to be news to share, so let's make sure we continue to connect. And to everyone out there watching, remember, for everything mold making, visit MoldMakingTechnology.com. Stay safe and healthy, and more importantly, stay informed and stay inspired.
Great, thank you.